Hello students, welcome to the Recitals in-Depth. Herein, we will cover the international relations May 2024 current affairs topics in detail. The broader themes which we are going to cover are as follows: trade-related aspects, immigration issues, crisis in the Middle East, boundary disputes, management of disasters, and defense and security of Indo-Pacific region. India's foreign trade with major trade partners. As per the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, India is facing a trade deficit with 9 out of its 10 top trading partners. Let us see what the issue is. Firstly, let us understand when does a trade deficit occur. A trade deficit would occur when the value of country's imports is greater than the value of its exports. It also reflects the trade competitiveness of a country, which means that to produce a product A, it is taking more amount of money and utilization of resources as compared to another country to produce the same product A. This would reflect on the trade balance sheet as well. Now let us understand what are the impacts of trade deficit. Is trade deficit always a bad phenomenon? So let us understand if there are some benefits of being in trade deficit. The first one is it is not a bad thing per se, because if we are importing a raw material or an intermediary product so that we could produce final goods and services, then it is not a bad thing, because we are deriving value out of that final good and services that we are exporting. So it is an aiding process. The second thing is higher imports. What higher imports would imply? It would imply that there are wider variety of goods and services that are present in the market. This also means that consumer has wider choices of choosing his basket of goods from. The third thing is currency depreciation. As and when the imports rise, there would be depreciation of the domestic currency, and this in turn would reduce, or it would increase the preference for Indian exports. They would become much more competitive as compared to the other products that are being imported. The last thing is it can also lead to innovation, which means that the domestic industries, in order to compete or outcompete the products that are being imported, they would go for innovation, whether it is with respect to efficiency or cost of the product. So the impact of trade deficit is not always negative. We have some benefits related to the impact. Now, what are the challenges? Of course, trade deficit does not come with only benefits. There are challenges to it also. First thing is there is over-reliance. When over-reliance on imports happens, then it may stifle the innovation that is going to take place in the domestic industries. The domestic industries would lose out on competition and therefore will move on to different sectors of industries. So it stifles innovation and competition in the domestic industries. The next thing is, if there is a significant import penetration, then also there would be industries that would be shut off, and this would lead to losses in the job market. For example, we have textiles. Cheaper textile products that are imported from our neighboring nation Bangladesh, and this has resulted into textile industries that have shut down and also caused job losses for the people involved in these industries. Then depreciating currency. It would lead to more expensive imports, which means that even if we are importing the goods as a raw material or as a intermediary product, then the final goods and services would be in the higher price range because of this depreciating currency. the overall trade competitiveness would go effectively down. Also, there is a challenge to repay the external debt. Now, external debt is paid partly through imports and exports trade balance. If we have much more amount of exports, then we have more amount of foreign exchange reserves available with us. However, if we have more amount of imports happening, that means our forex reserves will go down. So whatever debt, external debt that we borrow from other countries or multilateral financial institutions, our ability to pay off that external debt would go down. Now, let us understand what is the present status with respect to trade balance in India. So the first thing is, we have a trade deficit with these countries: China, Russia, South Korea, and Hong Kong. Now, this trade deficit, that is this economic relation that we have with these countries, also has effect on our strategic and geopolitical interest. As you would have heard that with respect to China, there's always a relation of border dispute or some points of conflict. For example, we have the Doklam issue in 2017, then again Galwan Valley. So when we are in trade deficit with such a nation and huge amount of imports are taking place from this nation, then it would lead to a serious economic dependence and an economic leverage that China may play at a later date. Again, we have trade surplus with United States, United Kingdom, Belgium, Italy, France, and Bangladesh. Now, whenever there is a trade surplus, especially with a developed country, there has been an observation that it may lead to restructuring of trade, and they would resort to non-trade barriers. You would have read about this in the World Trade Organization chapter. Overall trade deficit is at present $238 billion. Now, this trade deficit, though it is large, however, it has narrowed in the present financial year. Last, it was $264 billion. So this means that India is definitely improving its trade competitiveness and is becoming export intensive in some form. So let us now see what are the reasons for India's trade deficit. So the first thing is, we have a heavy reliance on energy imports. Now, close to 85% of our crude oil is imported, which means we have a serious issue when it comes to energy security. That is also one of the reasons that we are moving towards renewable energy production and also International Solar Alliance and wind energy and offshore wind energy farms. However, this import will lead to volatility because of global economic fluctuations with respect to trade in these commodities. Then we have a heavy dependence on key inputs, that is the raw material or the intermediary product that is needed to produce the final goods. India is known as the producer of generic medicines. However, 60% of its active pharmaceutical ingredients that are needed to manufacture these generic medicines are imported from China. And similar is the case with the semiconductor industry. Also, we have lower exports of manufactured products, which means that we have not generated enough capabilities to produce manufactured goods. And also, it has shown a reflection on the skilling ability of the workforce in this sector. So these are the major broad reasons for India's trade deficit. Now, what are the measures that can be taken to control trade deficit? What should we do in order to contain this trade deficit? One is we should go for trade agreements. Trade agreements in the form of free trade agreement would be something that would increase the competitiveness of goods being produced. For example, we have India-UAE FTA, in which we have 80% reduction in the tariffs of the goods that are being imported into UAE by India. So it has resulted into trade competitiveness and also compete with the products that are traded with respect to global markets. With respect to improving export infrastructure, a lot of work can be done here as well. The one most important thing is improving the logistical ability of India. Currently, the logistical support stands at 14% of GDP. So this means that this would reflect in the cost of products being produced and also transported. However, if we go for road links and multimodal transport systems, then this kind of a logistical ability would lead us to 10% of GDP required when it comes to creating logistics. This would reflect in the cost of the product that is being exported. 10% GDP is the average amount of global GDP that a developed nation takes so that it can export its product. Also, there should be import substitution. Wherever we can replace the global products from domestic ones, then we should opt for it. That is, we should go vocal for local. Here also, we have government schemes in which the government is required to procure a percentage of their products from the domestic industries. So this kind of import substitution through government e-marketplace, that is the GEM portal, should be the norm so that the trade deficit can be controlled. Skilling the workforce. This is particularly important when it comes to the manufacturing industries. In one of the countries, we have a trade deficit, and that country is South Korea. You would be surprised to know that the skilling of workforce there has been close to 90%, while for India, it is just nearly 5% formal skills. So effectively, this would also lead to containing the trade deficit. So this is the trade balance that we have at present. All of it is not bad because, as we had seen, that some of it is also used to produce the final goods and services. But then these are the measures that we should look forward to keeping the trade balance in mind. 7th India-Indonesia Joint Defense Cooperation Committee. Now, India and Indonesia have shared ancient civilizational links in the past, and they have also developed upon naval power as seen from the history books. However, at present, they are also going for strategic and defense cooperation in the region that they operate, that is the Indo-Pacific region and Indian Ocean. Let us have a look at what this defense cooperation is about. So for the first thing that we should consider is India-Indonesia relations and what are the areas of cooperation that we have. The first thing is economic relations. What are the economic relations that we have with Indonesia? So with respect to bilateral trade, it has grown to 9 times in the last 2 decades. 9 times in the last 22 years. Also, when it comes to trading with the Southeast Asian nations, that is the group of ASEAN, Indonesia happens to be our second largest trading partner. With respect to defense and security cooperation, we are also dealing with maritime security. This is because there is a close neighbor, China, that is also involved in the South China Sea, and it has been asserting itself in the region. So therefore, there must be capabilities, both maritime as well as military exercises, that has to be built so that such a situation can be warded off and the sovereignty of the nation Indonesia can be protected. So for this, we also are conducting joint military exercises that are called Garuda Shakti. Right? So this is the defense and security cooperation that we have. With respect to maritime cooperation, we definitely have proximity with respect to Indonesia, and we have shared interest in this region. Why so? There is connectivity issue that we need to resolve. That is Andaman and Nicobar with Sumatra. Also, there must be a surveillance of maritime traffic that is taking place, especially in the choke points area, that is the Malacca Straits, so that the trade routes are not hampered or stopped by any enemy of ours. We also have joint naval exercises which are conducted between India and Indonesia by the name of Samudra Shakti. Apart from this, we also have patrolling vessels, and such exercises are known by the name Corpat. With respect to 2018, there was shared vision for maritime cooperation, that is to utilize the connectivity factor when it comes to India and Indonesia, and also to utilize the marine resources that are available in the region. So we have a concerted effort to harness this ability of our regional connectivity. So what has happened in the Joint Defense Cooperation Committee that had taken place? Firstly, there is defense industry ties that is to take place, and it is to build defense modernization abilities of Indonesia. So multiple companies like Mahindra Defense, Mazgaon Shipbuilders Yard Limited, and so on. They have invested in these defense modernization aspects of this Joint Defense Cooperation Committee, and they have tried to build this industrial relation with Indonesian industries. With respect to maritime security, there has to be a stop on China's assertive behavior, as has also been observed when it comes to Philippines, and therefore the maritime security has to be ensured in the Indian Ocean region. With respect to multilateral cooperation, we are building on our trade abilities, especially in the defense sector, with respect to the Southeast Asian nations. So this is what has happened in JDCC, and we have observed that the defense cooperation has been on an ever increasing side. while in 2016 we were having just defense cooperation agreement, it was upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership, which means that we would be going for even further regional and defense security agreements in the future. So we would be enhancing our efforts in defense cooperation. Now let us understand what is the importance of Indonesia for India. For first, it is a part of the foreign policy of India, which is Act East. Act East policy would go for strategic, economic, developmental interests in the eastern region countries of India. With respect to security in region, it helps us to stabilize again Indian Ocean region, the South China Sea part and the East China Sea part. With respect to strategic and defense approaches, we have China and other countries that we want to retain our sovereignty from. And we would also like to have a rules-based order prevalent in the region, and so that Chinese expansionist policies may also be, to a certain limit, be stopped. We also have economic ties with respect to palm oil, where we import most of our palm oil from. Now, with respect to Indonesia, the present president-elect, Prabowo Subianto, he used to be the defense minister in the government at the earlier stage. Now he's going to be the next president of Indonesia. And he has said that national power is military power. And because of this, there would be more certain relations that would come forward within India and Indonesia when it comes to defense cooperation and maritime security. What should be the way forward then? Firstly, we should go for deepening the defense ties. Deepening of defense ties, whether it is related to creating regional stability or whether it is related to creating defense equipments or modernization of the defense forces, or even if it is involving the training modules for the sustained forces. Then there must be strengthening of economic and commercial relations. When it comes to dealing with trade, there must be further trade engagement so that we are ensured, particularly in the areas of defense, that capacity building would take place. More amount of economic resources that a country would generate, the more secure it can be in the future. Utilization of regional platforms like Indian Ocean region and ASEAN. And maritime and security issues must be addressed. The shared vision and the shared strategy on how to counter the Chinese presence and save our points of trade and sea lines of communication so that it does not affect or hinder our economic prospects. India-UK maritime cooperation. India and the United Kingdom signed a logistical agreement for the naval forces. This was to create a cooperation in the maritime security. Now, it was addressed that we would be taking care of logistical abilities like refueling or maintenance, and also be conducting training exercises for the naval forces of both the countries. In this aspect, let us delve into this issue. So, what are the recent developments in India's relation with United Kingdom? So, in 2021, despite having the Ukraine war and the pandemic, we went ahead for a comprehensive strategic partnership. Now, this partnership has laid down the defense and maritime laden cooperation and the roadmap till 2030. Besides this, there has been a considerable effort that has been taken with respect to Indo-Pacific region as far as United Kingdom is concerned. It is going to be a part of Indo-Pacific Organization Initiative. So this initiative is something which focuses on maritime security, maritime resources, and so on for capacity building within this region. Now, let us understand what is the importance of India-UK relationship. For United Kingdom, it is the Indo-Pacific region. With respect to Indo-Pacific region, India is supposed to be the key strategic partner for United Kingdom. This means that India is the point of contact for delivering its maritime security and also relate to the sovereignty of the nations that are present in this region. Then we have free trade agreement. Post Brexit, Britain has been looking for markets. And India provides for a huge amount of market for the British products. So it is also looking forward to establishing and concluding a free trade agreement with India. With respect to India, United Kingdom is a regional power in Indo-Pacific. It has naval stations in various parts of countries in this Indo-Pacific zone. They have in Bahrain, in Oman, Singapore, and so on. Also, India and the United Kingdom share a vision of countering China's assertive policy in the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region. So they would like to go for a maritime cooperation within this zone. Now, what are the benefits with respect to maritime cooperation with the United Kingdom or the Royal Navy that India would have? The first one would be capacity building. That is through joint exercises. And also logistical abilities that are being built up. So there would be construction of a number of naval warships that would be helping in having the naval army present and on the ground within this region. With respect to one very important thing, we have electric propulsion technology that the Royal Navy uses. Now, Indian Navy particularly uses engines which are operated on diesel or are steam or gas turbine operated. Now, this technology helps us to use electricity to propel the warship forward. It has certain benefits. One would be it has lower acoustic signature. That means it would provide for stealthy abilities or the warships. Secondly, it is based on electricity and not some fossil fuel based product. This means that it would also have a lower carbon footprint. Thirdly, it is also something which would enable us to have and move warships which are higher in weight. That is, more than 6,000 tons of warship can be moved using this technology. So this is a technology that India seeks to harness when it comes to maritime cooperation with the United Kingdom. So what are the challenges that we have to face in this relationship? One is obviously the colonial past. the colonial past, that is the 200 years rule of Britain on India. The second is historical advocacy for Pakistan. Now, United Kingdom has always struggled to favor India. That is, it cannot apply a India first ideology unlike its partner, United States. Also, with respect to extradition of economic offenders, the courts which have declared economic offenders in India, United Kingdom has not gone forward to extradite those criminals. So these are some of the challenges that we face in the relationship with United Kingdom. However, the colonial legacy that we have, the legacy issues and the geopolitical complexities that we have, it must be catered to and it must be ironed out so that we can move forward with our broader vision of securing Indo-Pacific region. Australian Parliamentary Report on India-Australia deal. India and Australia are on the path to negotiate a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement. The trade deal was signed in 2022 and the negotiations now seek to expand it. However, it has met with certain resistance from the Australian government. Let us look into this issue. So, there was an Australian parliamentary report which said that most of the products, that is the labor-intensive sectors, and in this trade, most of these sectors have been utilizing child labor or forced labor within their industries. And this poses to be a problem for the Australians. Now, what were the findings of the report in this case? With respect to child and forced labor, they have quoted the report, the Global Slavery Index, which says that modern slavery still exists in India and close to 11 million people are still under some form of modern day slavery. Modern day slavery would lead to people who are not able to refuse to work because of some threat or coercion. So this report quotes this index. The second evidence it shows is from Census 2011, where it says that 4% of children are not in schools and are found working. So combining these two facts, they have said that there must be child labor and forced labor within the country, and this is what our trade is being based upon. So how has India responded? India has said that we have rules and regulations in place. We have the necessary legislations put into place that prohibit child labor. We have it in the form of Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act of 1986. That is, we do not allow our children to work in the harmful industries. Secondly, they have also said that we have the necessary constitutional provisions. It is not just by the way of a legislation that we have prohibited such activities. It is also enshrined in our constitution, especially in the fundamental rights of Article 23 and Article 24, so that such kind of an exploitation can be avoided. Also, there has been strict licensing and compliance, which means that India has produced Labor Code in 2019 that pose important restrictions with respect to age, with respect to occupational safety, with respect to compensation for the workers, and has also granted them the necessary bargaining power. So how could we ascertain that India still has forced labor or child labor? So these are the arguments that India has. So how has India-Australia trade deal of 2022 happened? So they are aiming for bilateral trade, that is close to $50 million in the coming 5 years. We are aiming for this within this India-Australia trade deal of 2022. Also, there has been elimination of duties. Close to 96% of the goods that are imported from India are free of duties. And these cater mostly to the labor-intensive sectors. And that is why this issue has arisen. To present it into a perspective, the figure of $8 billion in the current financial year comes into play. This is over and above the financial year previously, and it has led to an increase by 15%. So, this is the case with respect to India and Australia. India maintains its stand and also hopes to see comprehensive economic cooperation agreement to be signed in the future, while Australia's moves are to be seen. That is all. Thank you so much.